So first thing I always start out with is how can people get a hold of you?
Easiest way is just contentmarketinginstitute.com. That's the business site where you can get to anything we do. And then for me personally, I'm at Joe Pulizzi on Twitter. And then my public site is joepulizzi.com.
Excellent. So if anyone wants to get a hold of you, go there. You know what? I'm going to ask you a question that I know you're going to hate and everyone asks you. What is content marketing?
You want me to start with what is content
You know
marketing?
what? I mean, that's your blunt, right? It's just, I'm sure people, and you have to understand, a lot of the people that I talk to or read my website are either solo entrepreneurs or have smaller companies, and they really are trying to figure out ways to do things. So, yeah, I think the best thing is, what is content marketing?
Yeah, so the I'll give you a formal definition and then I'm going to dumb it down a little bit and just talk to you about here's what the way I would think about it. But it's the idea of I'm a business, I'm going to create valuable, compelling, relevant content on a consistent basis to try to attract and retain customers by building an audience. So if we're thinking about the way we've traditionally gone to market, that would be, oh, I'm trying to distract somebody else that's reading a magazine or on the web or on a radio program, and I'm going to be the commercial, right? I'm going to be the content that they don't really want, but I'm trying to distract them long enough. That's traditionally what we've known as advertising. What I want businesses to think about is how do you become the content? How do you become the go-to resource? How do you become the blog that they go to get their information? How do you become the podcast series? How do you become the magazine? How do you become the go-to event in your industry? Becoming that content, thinking of yourselves like a publisher or a media company, building that relationship over the time. And because you have that relationship with customers, they end up buying from you. You're creating that loyalty, you're creating that relationship. It's been going on for a long, long time, but because there's no barriers to entry for creating content on the web anymore, there's this opportunity called content marketing, and there's a lot of businesses getting into it.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, you brought it up in your first response, but it's why does it work? I mean, I understand why it works because I use it, but just a really high level, why does it work, or why would a company want to do it?
Well, let's just take it in the past. If I wanted to become a media company 15 years ago, I would have to spend a lot of money on my circulation database. I would have to figure out my systems and processes to get that up and running. I'd have to figure out where is the audience. Well, today on the web, your audience is there and accessible. So if you can consistently deliver content on the web over a long period of time, just like a publisher would, you can find an audience. Where it breaks down for most businesses, let's say small businesses, is that they stop. So if you said, Joe, why do most businesses fail with content marketing? I would say because they stop. Because at some point they gave up, they didn't have the patience, they weren't consistent about it, they didn't deliver the promise of content to their customers on a consistent basis, and it breaks down. I can tell you, Chris, for almost certainty, if you stuck with it, if you had a niche audience that you targeted, and for 18 months you delivered content on a consistent basis to them that they couldn't get anywhere else, you would be successful and you would grow an audience. It's just if you said 6 to 9 months, I can't make a promise of that. That's just too short of a timetable. Like when I was in publishing, we had 3 year timetables because we know it took about 2 to 3 years to really build an engaged audience over time. So what's great about today is there are no barriers to entry. You can start a blog tomorrow that's essentially free, and you can get that and make that available so Google can find it, so people can share it on social media. You can get email marketing technology that you can send a newsletter out to your database. These are things that didn't exist 10 years ago in such an easy way. And now as small businesses, we have them. It's just who are we trying to target and what are we trying to do? What kind of value are we trying to add to them instead of just pitching our products all the time? We have to create some value for them. And a lot of businesses have trouble doing that. We want to pitch all the time and we've got to give more and be helpful more. And that's where the secret sauce is at.
I think it's interesting because you talk about personas in the book or personas depending on which side of the border. I'm up in Canada, but you're in the U.S. So the idea behind it is, and I think what you're saying is, and I totally get it, is don't sell, it's educate basically, right? It's like find that problem and fix it. Is that a fair assessment as well?
I think that's one probably the best way to go to market. There's lots of different types of content marketing. The content marketing that's coming out of Coca-Cola that they're talking about entertaining and they're really trying to make an emotional connection with you is different than what John Deere is doing with the Furrow magazine, where they're really trying to help farmers become better small business owners. And that's been the goal of the Furrow magazine for over 100 years. But if I'm a small business, especially in B2B, I'm thinking, okay, around my industry, for my exact audience, what's keeping them up at night? What are they really struggling with in their business that I can help them with? And you're going to give and give and give. And what's really great, Chris, is in a lot of startups, and when we advise startups on this, we say, look, let's focus on the audience needs first, because your product is going to change and evolve and whatever, but you know who the audience is. So let's create a relationship with that audience through consistent content. Let's build that audience, and then we can start to release products and get their feedback and get some insight from that. I actually think if I'm a startup today, I'm going to go after the audience first, and then the product's going to come second. It's just a lot of companies are impatient. They don't want to do that, but I think that's a better way to go to market today.
Well, it's yeah. I mean, it's interesting. The other thing you mentioned there was, and by the way, that's good. That's sales 101, basically. Understand the need of a client, right?
Exactly.
But so many people miss that. I think the other thing that you hit on that was interesting, and it's in the book, and I think the stat is 85% of all blogs or content that's started stops, and of corporations. And I find that, and I absolutely understand that, because of the fact that, if you go to a website, I always see this. Someone has a blog, they got a flurry of activity right up front, and then it starts to taper off, and then it really tapers off, and then it just stops, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my perception of that is, if a company can't keep with that, how can they keep with me as a client, right? Or as a long-term client? What are your thoughts around that sort of stuff?
Well, and we talk to agencies about this a lot. So if somebody comes to me and says, Joe, I'm looking for a content marketing agency, who should I pick? And my first response is always, well, look to see who's doing the best content marketing. Are they basically doing what you want them to do for themselves? Consulting companies are notorious for this, right? So we'll get large consulting companies, or let's say even accountants, anybody with knowledge IP. They'll say, "Oh, I don't want to give away my secret sauce. I don't want to give that away freely." And I'm like, here's the deal. If you do this and you do it really well, you will grow your audience to such an extent you'll get opportunities you've never had before, because you're really sharing secrets and the people that want information. So you're growing the audience, and you probably won't go up against any competition, because they're going to be getting their information from you. They're already going to believe you're the trusted expert. They're not going to have to go bid this out with 2-3 other companies. They're going to go directly to you, which what we're seeing in a lot of case studies is it's basically you're the only one up for the job, which is great because they already know you can do the job. And then they'll say, well, Joe, what if one of these people that read my post or listen to my podcast, what if they go do it themselves? And I'm like, well, that could happen, but let me ask you this. Do you really want that kind of business? Mm-hmm. Do you want, and actually what I love about the sales process, it ferrets out those people that you don't want to waste your time with in the sales process. They can go figure it out themselves. They can be gone. And the ones that really want to know you can do the job, that don't want to do it themselves, that's basically you can sell them, and that's what you want. So there's really, from my opinion, there's no downside to it. But I mean, that's what we've done at Content Marketing Institute. All we do is create a lot of content. People say, oh, I want to go to their event. Not because it's, we say it's the greatest event in the world. It's because we've been delivering content to them for months and years. They believe in what we have to say, and they're going to support what we have to sell.
Absolutely. It's a wonderful model. It's amazing that it has, it's been around for such a long time, but really is truly catching on. I'm going to hold the book up again so people can see it. And a little bit of shine on it, but it's a great book. I love it. I say that at every author. I'm sure they all think I'm telling them feeding them a line.
I think you have to. You're forced to say you love it.
Yeah, actually, what I do? I love. I'm one of those guys who just craves knowledge, right? And I love the stuff, especially in the book. I mean, you lay out so much stuff. It's like just what you just talked about is you give away everything in that book. And it's just amazing. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, you kind of brought it up a little bit earlier, though, is what constitutes content. And you have a section in the book that really talks about multiple pieces of content. And I'm not going to ask you to ring off every single one, but if someone were starting out trying to look at content or trying to do content, what are like 2 or 3 things that they could actually leverage?
So the first thing is, what's amazing is the majority of companies, small and large companies, they start experimenting in content but have no strategy for it. So I need to say that because I don't want people to listen to this say, oh, I got to start a blog tomorrow, or I'm going to do a podcast. No. Here's what we want to figure out. We want to figure out two things: is where can we fill a need? Where can you really fill a need for your audience, and be specific about your audience. Like, if you're a B2B company, you probably are targeting 7 to 8 different audiences. Well, which one are we talking to? We can't communicate with all of them. So which one specifically are we talking to? That we can fill a need, that we can be consistent about something, and how are we going to link that over to business objectives? What are we trying to do? What's if we pull the content marketing lever, what is the difference going to be for our company? So are we going to drive sales? Is that how we're going to measure it? Are we going to save costs in some way? Is this maybe a better way to go to market than traditional PR or advertising? Or maybe we're trying to keep customers longer. Or maybe we're trying to have our customers buy more. What is it? So create that hypothesis and put that basic strategy together. And Chris, I'm not a guy that says you have to have a big 8-page single typed proposal as to what you're doing with content marketing. I'm more of a get a cocktail napkin and draw it down, but document it in some way. So the first thing is, yes, that's what I'm trying to do to that specific audience, and I'm going to create that, what we call a content marketing mission statement to those people. Then, okay, now we're into content types. What are we looking at? You could do a blog, right? You could get a WordPress blog and start your blog. You could do a podcast. I just started a podcast about 6 months ago. It's been incredibly successful, and I'm surprised about the people that listen to audio.
Absolutely.
I mean, to your point, these are the people that are really hungry for knowledge. So if you're in the knowledge business, I would absolutely look at a podcast. You've got ongoing videos. You've got a print newsletter. You've got print magazine. You've got an email newsletter. You've got webinars that you could do. You've got in-person events. You've got ebooks and white papers. I mean, there's we talk, and then you get into social media, infographics, all kinds of different things that you can do.
That was, you know what? It was I'm trying to look here at I wrote it down a question. There's a section of the book. I mean, the whole thing, it's literally like the longest chapter, and it just lays out all the rules. And that alone is worth it for the book, just so you can get it. And that and other things. Sorry about that, Joe. I mean, that's the only thing that's worthwhile in the book. No, everything's worthwhile in the book, right? So, repurposing content, though, I think the interesting thing is that it takes it from you kind of talk about in here about how can you repurpose something 10 ways is kind of the concept behind this. And what's your what is your concept behind repurposing? Because once again, a lot of my audiences don't understand that sort of stuff and just how they could use it. And I call it kind of multi-marketing, right?
Sure. Well, it's just smart. I mean, it's like smart. It's just smart marketing. Like you talked about Sales 101. This is just smart marketing. So how most companies do it is they'll create an ebook or a blog post that goes viral or gets a lot of attention. And then they'll say, how can we reuse this? Here's what I want you to think about. I want you to say, okay, we're going to create an editorial calendar. And as part of every piece of content we create, I want you to start thinking about different ways we can communicate that message. And so when you create your editorial calendar, let's say that you're going to start a blog. It's like, okay, here's the blog topic, and here is the audience we're targeting, and here's the keywords that we're targeting. And then I want you to put a blog to blank. What's that blog going to become? Maybe that blog is going to become part of an ebook series that we're going to stretch out the content on that. Maybe, like I've done with 2 of my books, maybe that blog becomes part of a print book. So 75% of that book you held up, Epic Content Marketing, 75% of that book comes from, with the planning of it, thank you, with the plan for how can I take these blog posts and re-engineer a book. So I started to think, okay, what are chapters? Because it's, as you know, it takes time to write a book. But how can I accomplish current goals to accomplish future goals with my book? So I'm going to think, okay, I need to write a chapter on social influencer marketing. Okay, let me do a post. That's going to be chapter 23 in the book. Or I'm going to need to do one on ROI. Okay, that'll be part of chapter 25. And to think about it that way, and then after 6 months, I've nearly got a book written. Mm-hmm. You could do the same thing with, okay, I'm going to write a blog, and that becomes a podcast. Like we do that right now with our podcast, This Old Marketing, where we say, okay, we're going to do the podcast, and then that podcast becomes a blog post. And then that will then ultimately become an ebook. And that will ultimately become pieces of content for my email newsletter. It's not rocket science. It's just sort of just thinking about the different ways we can touch our audience and what the goals are for our particular channel and how we can do the most with the time and resources we have.
Absolutely. One of the best things I ever heard was actually the same thing: is take the blog post, create a book, and that is your ultimate in the door to see people. Right? People hold authors in high esteem. Like I'm bowing to you right now, right? Because you're an author. But the whole idea behind it is, I mean, clearly differentiates you from your competitors as well. Right?
Everybody, I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, this is my take. Every business, if they really want to position themselves as a thought leader, you have to have a book.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be a print book, but it's so easy to do print on demand today.
Yeah.
You don't have to go with a traditional publisher because nobody cares. Nobody looks at, oh, are you published by McGraw-Hill or Wiley or Penguin? Nobody looks at that stuff. It's like, oh, you have a book.
Yep.
So like even as I want to go and get speaking gigs, the first thing, if you're looking at requirements to get a speaking opportunity, the first thing is, does this person have a book? And with it, we put such a value on books, and we know that a book is generally going to cost $20. All the other marketing we give away, we have to almost in some cases pay people to take it. In a book, they pay you to take it, and it's marketing. And I just think that there's a system that you can set up and say, okay, today I want to have a book done in 6 months. How do I get there? And how do I feed the content beast all the way through that 6 months? And at the end, I have a book.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the best way to do it. Hey, one of the things I took away from the book, which I found absolutely intriguing. I'm a visual guy, so what I do when I do blog posts is typically video, transcribed. I use it into a podcast, multi-purpose, kind of like what you're talking about, right? Sure. And one of the things I saw on page 80 was the visual content, and the results are 91% more. More reads or knowledge or understanding of it. Why is it that adding a picture to a post or content creates much more remembrance of that stuff?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say just look at your own behavior on social media. We gravitate. We're quick. We are quicker to learn from something visual than we are from something in the word. So that's where, if you're looking at what's the most important thing, I mean, so look at it this way. What's the purpose of the cover of a magazine? Purpose of a cover of a magazine, it has one purpose: to be opened. That's the only purpose.
Yep.
So what is the purpose when you're actually want to get your content socially shared? You have two really important things that are going to make an impact about whether that's opened and shared. One is the headline, and two is the image. Those two. It's not any of the content that's inside. You could have Pulitzer Prize winning content on the inside, and if you don't have a good headline and a good image associated with it, you're not going to get it open. So if I'm a business, I'm spending more and more time on making sure that make it easy for people to open and share than all the time that you spend on the inside. I know companies that have spent thousands and thousands of dollars on ebooks and they never get any downloads. It's like, okay, well, let's spend up some time on the upfront, visually as well as the headline, like what is the title of this book or this post, and then I want to spend actually about 75% of my time on distribution, because so many companies spend so much time on content creation, they're not building an audience. I want to build an epic piece of content and make sure that I get that to as many people as possible, so then I can get them to come back and build my audience and build subscription that'll ultimately build my goals, accomplish my goals.
That's awesome. Hey, the other thing that I love, so once again, I keep saying there's one good thing in the book. There's so many good things in the book, right? Page 162.
There's three. There's only three.
There's only
or
three,
four,
right?
maybe.
Your picture in the back, the front cover, like you just talked about, and the page 162. And I know you know your book inside and out. You know all the pages in them and what's on them. But the 10 blogging tips to remember. So I'm just highlighting this because of the fact that a lot of people will probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but leverage a blog to start creating content, at least within their organization. I would assume that's probably one of the ways that they go. And you just brought up a couple of things here, and I think one is the killer titles, focus on a problem, and the one that always kills me when I read ones is have a clear call to action, right? Give me your thoughts on like what is a clear call to action, and why do so many people miss that?
You're taking the buyer on a journey, right? In some way, whether that could be a top of the funnel, it could be close to conversion, but let's say that you're talking about a blog. A lot of that content is top of the funnel, mid funnel. So we're talking about solving their problems, solving their challenges, specific industry issues. You're not talking about your product or service. So if they're going through a problem solving challenge of some kind, they're going to read this post. What do you want them to do? Like literally in your editorial calendar, I want you to ask yourself, okay, they just read this article. We got them to read it. What do you want them to do? Do you want them to download an ebook? Do you want them to go read your book? Do you want them to, do they need to check out this event? What do they need to do? What's the next step in the process? Sometimes it's very hard to get one depending on what the content is. But in almost every one, you have to have an idea of, I'm trying to take them down this journey. And I mean, how many blog posts do you go to that just stop and that's it? You're like, seriously?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing else? Like, is there a getting started program or something? So we want to do a really, really good job of separating the content from the sales. So the content is pure content. But at the end, I think it's okay to give them a little bit of sales. I mean, are you trying to sign them up for something? Is there a product that's really relevant to the problem that you just solved? I think that's absolutely okay for you to do as an organization. And if you don't think about it, you're going to get a lot of people reading and they're not going to know where to go and they'll probably go somewhere else.
Yeah, it's people are inherently, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but inherently lazy. You have to tell them what to do, right? Is the biggest thing. Hey, one thing that I want to highlight, at least in here, so that people get it and they understand in the book, is the engagement cycle. We're not going to talk into that because I mean that on its own is just a whole complete.
Oh, that's a heavy one. That's
exactly,
a heavy chapter.
But just chapter 11, if anyone that goes out and buys a book, just to understand how to map out things and connect it to the buying cycle, that is, once again, well worth it. There's the three things, right? The blogging, the mapping things out, and your picture on the back of it. So it's hey, I'm coming up on close to our time frame here, but one of the things, there's two other questions I really want is,
sure.
Especially if you're in an organization and you're trying to do this as a blog and stuff. CEOs and other people at CXO levels, they want to know, what results are we getting, right? How does someone measure this sort of stuff if they're going out?
If there is a holy grail measurement, I mean, there's lots of different metrics because it depends on what you're trying to do. I can't tell you that this is the way you measure content marketing because I don't know. Are you trying to drive leads? Are you trying to keep customers longer or happier or create better customers? What are you trying to do? So that will depend on, and then I'll look at the metrics associated with that. But if there was a holy grail metric, I would say it's the subscriber, actually getting subscription in. Well, why is that? Well, we're trying to build an audience. That's the goal of content marketing is to build and nurture an audience over a long period of time that ultimately leads to some profitable customer action. So what we've found with most, either ourselves, the Content Marketing Institute, or our customers, is what's the difference between somebody that subscribes to your content versus somebody that doesn't? This is why you need the time, Chris. You need a little bit of time because it has to go through the buying cycle. Sometimes you can't tell right away what a subscriber is going to do. But for us, for Content Marketing Institute, what we know is that about 80% of our total revenue for our organization comes from those people that have been subscribed to our content for over 6 months. So what does that tell me as a CEO? That tells me that I'm not going to pitch people right away. It's a more considered purchase. It takes some time. I'm not just going to say, hey, you got to contentmarketinginstitute.com. You got to come to our event. No. What we want to do is sign them up. We want to show them, yes, we do know what we're talking about. We want to be a real valuable resource around content marketing, really helpful tips. And as they go, they'll start searching themselves and asking more questions. And if they want to take the next step, we have those things to offer. So I know that a subscriber is hugely valuable to us. But that's where I think you have to figure out, okay, well, when you look at a subscriber, let's say after a year, do they stay longer? Maybe they buy twice as much as a non-subscriber does because then you can match those people up with your customer database. Hugely valuable. So that's where I love subscribers as sort of the best way to go to market. If you are trying to convince your CEO, I would go, and we talk about this in the book, I would do a pilot program because CEOs don't want to overly commit to something they don't understand. So say, hey, I'm just running a pilot. Like you know that it needs to go long term. You know that these needs to go for years, but sell it as a pilot. Yep. Here's what you're trying to do: get group consensus in the C level. Here's what we're trying to do: we're trying to drive more leads, and we're trying to do it without paying for it through Google AdWords or paid sponsorship of some way. Okay, that's going to be a blog. Well, what goes into that? Well, we're going to blog 3 times a week, and we're going to create an email newsletter along with that, and a giveaway ebook, and go through the whole thing. And here's our expectations at 6 months, and here's the metrics that we think we can hit. And I'm going to come back at 6 months, and I'm going to tell you what we've done, and if the hypothesis is right, and I'm going to ask for more money. I don't know if a CEO would say no to that. They're like, oh, this makes sense. I can do this. So run it as a pilot. You know you need it for 18 months, 2 years. You know it's not going to stop. But at least you can get the CEO to buy in and give you a little bit. And once you get a taste for those results and that organic traffic and people signing up for your content when you're not selling something, it'll start to work in the organization, and it'll work for you.
Yeah, I think one of the things you also talk in the book, and we're not going to get into it, but is also actions or people's actions on your website or what they do constitutes more visibility into what. So if we know someone comes 10 times, they look at this, they go here, they download this, 60% of them become buyers, right? So you can start seeing the story. It starts to tell the story, which I thought was fascinating. It's really good.
Well, I mean, we work with a lot of companies on the B2B side that says the magic number is around 8 pieces of content that somebody engages in to get them from like a no lead to an actually qualified lead of some kind. And they're not contacting your sales team, right? Yep. That's all through their own content discovery. So if you have plotted out, as you talked about, the engagement cycle, and you plot out the journey a little bit, get a little sophisticated, you can give them the information they need. So when they're ready to buy something, they buy from you because you've delivered that value to them all along the purchase process.
Absolutely. I mean, if I were to look at it, it's, you provide me value and someone is giving me nothing, I know where I'm going to go.
That's exactly right.
I always ask this question. It's the last question I always ask is, you've written a book. You've taken a lot of time to do this. You've given us a lot of secret sauce. You've been very open and with everything, and I appreciate that. What is one thing, if you had to distill your book down, that you want someone to take away? What would it be?
I would. Oh, there's 3. No,
you can use 3. You know what? I don't care. No. You can use 3.
I would probably.
I like
say
it.
This.
You can use 3.
I would probably say this. If you look at the current way you're marketing, you're probably doing it wrong. Because most of our processes in the marketing and sales processes are built on stuff that we've been doing for decades, and I think there's a better way today. I think that if all the sales and marketing processes were gone and we just woke up today with a clean slate, we would all say, how do I build my own audience so I don't have to go and buy it from somebody else? Mm-hmm. Or I don't have to rent it from somebody else. I just think it makes too much sense. We would all be in the publishing business, and we would all say, oh, we're going to build an audience so then ultimately we can sell them stuff. So I would just say, think about your marketing a little bit differently and how you can look at your marketing as an asset and not an expense. And by asset, I mean build an audience.
Absolutely.
Build an audience and see what does that audience mean for your business. And it probably is a fraction of the cost of the other stuff that you're doing right now. So I would just look at it a little bit differently from that respect.
Absolutely. Joe, I appreciate your time today. And as I say, being so forthright with your information and everything, I am holding the book up again. Yay! As I tell every single author, love the book. There's so much information and nuggets that you can take out of this book. It's incredible. It's like I say, there is far more than just 3 things out of your book that you can take away. There is like so much that you can actually do. I love the way you go through it too and just kind of talk about it up front and then just say, well, here's how you do it too, right? Which I think is phenomenal. It's like teach, and get people going, right? It's the education piece, right? So.
And Chris, it's not rocket science. Any company can do this. It's just thinking a little bit differently about how we go to market.
You bet. Wait around for a couple seconds after we're done here, and then we'll go from there. So once again, how do people get a hold of you?
You can find me at Joe Pulizzi on Twitter, and if you're looking for anything regarding me, email, whatever, just type in Joe Pulizzi into Google, and you'll find me. And then the business is contentmarketinginstitute.com. EpicContentMarketing.com is the book, and the event is ContentMarketingWorld.com.
Excellent. Once again, thanks a lot for your time. Greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris. Anytime.